All right, we're live. Let's go look at freight, what's going on in the spot market today, and what's going on with the weather and the whole thing. So stay tuned. Let's go. Yes. Good morning. It is Friday, April 4th. We're in the beginning of the second quarter, so hope you're all doing well. We are, man. It's been kind of an interesting week. We had one of the trucks that I dispatched completely just engine failure. So that was so that's made it interesting. And then dealing with the weather. Let's take a look at weather real quick. If you are in, let's see, share screen. There we go. Allow. All right. If you're in this area right here, you're going to have a very interesting time. And of course, that's the big running areas, right? So, um, I mean, we're like they're calling for snow, like in our area a little bit. Um, let's see, severe thunderstorm watch down here, but you know the flooding, the epic flooding is what they've been talking about. So watch your rivers. Some of your interstates might get shut down, especially if you're on 40. So just keep an eye on that. It's going to get interesting. And then you got some winter weather going on here in New Mexico. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. But anyways, that's kind of what's going on weather-wise. Dispatch has been kind of interesting this week. The rates have been driven down. I was talking to my mega broker agent guy that I go to a lot, and he said that normally he sees triple of what he was seeing on the board, because every rate he was throwing at me was kind of like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? He's like, man, he goes, normally I see triple of what I'm normally looking at, and today, and so when that happens, the computers tell these brokers to keep the rates down if they're going by that. So, but luckily we have some brokers with contract freight that have been pretty steady, and they're not at the whim of the AI pricing and all that. So we'll take a look at some of the the rates, and where should your trucks be For a minute, the Southeast came alive a little bit. You're actually better off to find a load out of Georgia than Ohio. So we're going to look to see if that's still the case. And yeah, so let's get to it. So we'll get to the comments here. Ratman Roden, look at you. Good morning. I know it was probably April Fool's, but you really need to come through Springfield again because there's a great Mexican restaurant right by the truck stop. So if you come through town again, we'll take you there. It's awesome. It's where I've been taking all the drivers when they come through town because it's literally right next to the truck stop there at exit 88. So it's a good place. But it's good to see you, my friend. Let's go to the beginning here. I know you were a busy man, so I wanted to comment on your comment first. So Charity Sharp, good morning. We'll look after this. And I believe you're aiming to get 1902, Charity. So just letting you know there. Red Lady, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Your husband's been in good hands. And we've had to run a little bit this week. So pay attention to Sterling Trucking Delivers if you want some more details. I mean, Red Lady's going to get the details no matter what. But Mrs. A is in the house. Look at all the ladies showing up early. Yep. Except for Shannon. Shannon's not here yet. CDN, bam, the legend is back. Good morning, Steve. Be sure to get a ride your awesome bike this weekend. Judging by this weather map, I don't think that's going to happen. CDN, I don't think that's going to happen. We've got a lot of things going on. The weekends are almost more work than the work day, it seems like. But good advice nonetheless. Gen Z, what's up? Good morning. Randy, good morning from the house. It is hot. It's supposed to we're supposed to get a light dusting of snow this weekend. Can you believe that on Sunday morning? You gotta love it. Jerome Jones, good morning. Chief Ray Holler, good morning. Hope everyone's had a profitable week. Might be securing, Gen Z says, might be securing a somewhat dedicated flatbed lane at a pretty good rate. Waiting to hear back, but have done it 3 days in a row this week. Luckily, I've gotten some mulch every day coming back. That's good. Only downside outbound is tarped. Yeah. Well, yeah. Right way to truck. Good morning. Shadow Wolf, man, we've got some old school people in here. Good morning to all those drivers out there. Good to see you, my friend. Does that invite to Mexican apply to anyone? Yeah, if you come through Springfield and I'm not busy, there's all you got to do is text me or message me, or if you got my phone number, and or messenger on Facebook, and let me know, and if I can make it work, man, we'll hit that place. It's right next to the truck stops there, so there's parking. It's good to go. So yeah, it's not just like trucks. 1902, Sherry. 19 breaker 19. Red Lady says, yes, you guys are taking good care of them. Thank you. Good. You're welcome. Gary Cook, good morning. I've been finding some kind of virus. Ooh, not good. That stuff's been going around. That's for sure. And allergy season is upon us too. Knocked my son out for a few days. Been a rough few weeks. I've spent $8,000 in various repairs the last 3 weeks. Was grateful to have savings. That amount of repairs in a short time would have taken many people out. Yes, and that's commonplace. I've got a friend of mine right now struggling with dealing with an engine rebuild. So he called me. It's not one of our drivers, but he called me, and he was not feeling good about things. So Georgia rates cooled off this week. Temps will cool off next week, right? 32 degrees here in Michigan. Yep. All right. So what was I going to talk about before I saw the people coming in here? Well, let's take a look at rates. Let's see. Let's get the 1, 2, 3 low board up here. And boom. There you go. There's Lauren. Load availability. Let's check the maps. And let's go to van. So what I have found, so what I've been seeing, like especially on the DAT board, because I also subscribe to the DAT board, right? They don't pay me to promote them, though. But 123, they've been great guys, and like I said, the best tool I use is this market rate tool. Like here, I've got Kansas City to Orange, Virginia, and these market tool rates have been really, really on point. Especially the green screens tool. The Cargo Chief does well too, but anyways, I look at the volumes on DAT because that's where a majority of the loads on the spot market are. I don't have a subscription to Truck Stop. I tried talking to them, and they're like, "Whatever, dude." I'm like, "Okay." But one thing I noticed is that the first thing I noticed was that Florida rates going into Florida had dropped, and I'm a guy that goes, okay, when something happens, I want to know why, right? And so I looked at outbound volumes on DAT of Florida, 1040 in and 792 out. Now, yesterday, this was like 1,000 in and like almost 900 out. So the truck ratio had kind of, the load in and out ratio had kind of like matched each other. And so I was reminded that it is plants season. Flowers are starting to come out. Plants are starting to come out. Vented vans are you can make some money coming out of Florida now, which is why they're not paying to go in. So I thought, oh, great, right? Great. So that was sarcasm, by the way. But that's kind of when you see an area explode or die off or change, you want to know the why. And a perfect example is earlier this year, or basically last year, when the bridge in Baltimore fell. That affected freight for a while, and then I knew that Georgia, the Savannah ports were going to wake up a little bit because they were going to put the ship freight down there. And then when the strike was about to happen, that affected things, and then the tariffs are affecting things. So this Florida was kind of an anomaly. Then I remembered, oh, this time of year, that was when we have the plants, and if you got a vented van, you could probably make some decent money coming out. Now it's going to be dirty work, it's going to be multiple stop work, but you could probably make some money coming out, more than you normally would going into Florida. So that's why they adjust the rates going in. Like I was seeing loads for $1.90 a mile out of Ohio going into Miami. And I'm like, yeah, that's a big heck no, right? And so just finding the whys is important when you're dealing with something as volatile as the spot market. And then and then the other thing is the steady gigs, right? And this is what Sterling and I talked about. So when Sterling and I found this little niche, this broker had about 20 loads a day, and the broker also has a trucking company. They were moving a ton of this one particular product from one part of Ohio to another. And I told Sterling, I was like, look, man, we'll ride this wave for as long as you want, but mark my words, it's going to dry up at some point. And sure enough, they started to lower the rates a little bit, and then it was gone. And it wasn't on the DAT board anymore. I called the broker that we've been working with. He's like, yeah, man, they're changing, like something has shifted. So they're trying to play catch up or something on the warehouses. And so all good things come to an end. All gravy trains come to an end. And so it's important to be flexible. It's important to still keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on, even though you might be in something that's kind of dedicated or semi-dedicated, because everything affects everything. And And I knew, and I've seen it over and over and over. It dries up. Like for a week, I did this Joplin to Rogers stuff, and sure enough, it got to the point where it wasn't manageable anymore because the warehouses slowed down. The warehouses were full, and that's kind of the gold mine that a lot of brokerages look for is like, okay, this is a big project. We need to move 300 loads in the next 3 months. And so they put all their resources in that. Then eventually it slows down, or the shipper wants to change the rate and now the rates get lower. Or they'll forego a profit margin just to get the trucks in the doors. And then eventually they need to get their profit margin, so they eventually start lowering the rate little bit by little bit by little bit. And every single dedicated or semi-dedicated type or contract type thing I've been a part of has done that, except for one. Every single time. Like, WCF Invader, when I was dispatching him, I didn't dispatch him that much because he was involved in that kind of project. And what did they do? They eventually lowered the rate and lowered the rate and lowered the rate till it wasn't manageable anymore. And that's how a lot of these big companies go out of business, is they do that on a much bigger basis. Think about all the companies that have gone out of business that were running U.S. mail. So, I mean, this is just the nature of the game, right? This is the nature of the game. And that's why if you have a gravy train, you ride it for as long as you can, but don't forget where you come from. Don't forget what you're doing. And that way when that ends, and sometimes it ends suddenly, you can go back to making what you were before, doing what you were doing before. And that's essentially what we had to do this week. So, just kind of keep that in mind, that all good things come to an end, all of them, right? Except for one. But, but that's a different topic for the other channel. So, CDN says Illinois 250 regional LTL carrier closes, lost jobs again. Freightwaves, yep. Illinois Trucking Company, yeah, the LTI, I believe, right? CDN says, I've said it several times, shippers in 25 are pointing at brokers and carriers to help keep freight costs down, to help keep them competitive in their specific market. Spot market equals focus on low cost. Now, what's interesting is, and I'm gonna create some controversy here. Okay, let me find this post. No, I don't want that. What's on my mind? I don't want to do that. Let's see. Where's my search? I'm not used to doing Facebook on the computers. Right. Mile Masters. CDN, you specifically, I want to know what your thoughts are on this. Okay. So let's see if there's any private information on here. Nope. Okay. All right. Share the screen. Cats are going nuts behind me, so there's that. So if this screen suddenly comes down behind me, then blame the cats. So there's a Facebook group called Rate Per Mile Masters. They do have a little bit of weight, and the main guy is Chad Boblet. Love him or hate him. I've met the guy. He seems all right, but he can definitely rub you the wrong way because he just speaks bluntly, right? And he doesn't coddle anybody. And so here's what he says: tariffs unleashed. Why owner operators about to rule the road. These new tariffs slammed down on April 3rd, 2025 are going to juice up owner operators and small carriers. No fluff. First off, and CDN, I want to know your opinion on this, okay? First off, these 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico auto imports and 10% on everything else. They're about to light a fire under domestic freight. Manufacturers are going to freak out and yank production back to the U.S. to dodge those costs. Boom, more loads for you. Think steel parts, whatever. Your rig's hauling it by May 2025. Get ready to cash in. Second, the border's a mess now. 85% of Mexico trade, 67% of Canada trade on trucks, and these tariffs are going to choke it. Big carriers can eat the paperwork, but you're swooping in, snagging domestic runs while they're stuck in Laredo, Detroit. These spots are gold mines. Spot rates are going to spike hard. Think 20% jumps by June of 2025. Third, you're small, you're quick, you're a ninja. Big fleets are locked into garbage contracts that'll tank with these tariffs, but you're free to hit the spot market and milk every dime. Remember 2018? Rates shot up 28%. This could be your encore. So basically, okay, let me keep reading. Fuel. If these tariffs kneecap global trade, oil's dipping and diesel might drop 5 to 10 cents a gallon by summer. That's less cash bleeding out of your tank, more in your pocket. And equipment, yeah, Mexican-made rig is $35,000 pricier now, but who cares? I disagree with that part. Your old beast keeps rolling. If U.S. truck makers like Freightliner get a kick, they'll throw financing deals at you by year-end, upgrade on their dime. This is your shot. Adapt. Hit the hot lane. Squeeze every cent out of this chaos. The big dogs will catch up by 2026, but then you're the king of the road. So basically, what he's doing is he's comparing this to what happened in 2018 in the spot market. Now, I admit that I have not been keeping up with the tariffs. Why? Is because most of the people talking about tariffs, especially in the news, are biased, right? They're either a Trump worshiper or they're a Trump hater. And so I haven't taken the time to filter out who's actually doing the real analysis, regardless of political affiliation. Okay. And so that remains to be seen. Does Chad Boblet have a good point? And if you ever want to add your 2 cents and ask to join Rate Per Mile Masters with CDN, I encourage you to join that group, because you really get the depth of what drivers are thinking, right? I think a big challenge for a lot of brokers is, how is a driver, what is the driver seeing on the driver level? What is the carrier seeing at the carrier level? That's why a broker might have a way different opinion of highway than, say, one truck carrier. So I mean, it's a good resource. Yeah, you've got to go through a lot of the hate. He tries to keep the hatred down to a minimum, in my opinion. It's not like a lot of these trucking groups that do nothing but complain about the trucking industry. And there are actions that he's taken to help people and help carriers. I have a friend of mine that was recently helped by a connection that Chad had, and it was a highway thing too. So, but I those thoughts, I'm just curious about them. Let's see. CDN says, I have a customer wanting me to find them cheap intermodal rate for 24 loads happening August through September, but lock-in rate in April. Not easy to do. Yeah, that would be not easy to do. I have customer wanting me to, lock in a specific rate for a year for a specific lane, but they cannot commit a specific schedule. Again, not easy. Oh, I definitely know you don't have an easy job. Fuel trading dropped 15 cents yesterday. Curious how many will use the fuel is down today when negotiating rates. That's why I've never used that as a negotiating, right? Unless I'm talking about specific area. Like, I need a little bit more, in and out of like Pennsylvania or California or Maine, because, there's, fuel's higher there. But like, as far as overall prices, because the last thing I want the broker to do is like, well, the reason why I can, tell you my, 30% lower rate than what it's been last week is because fuel dropped. That's why I never go, well, fuel's up, so I need X amount more. No, I just tell them what I need. And then if they want a breakdown, I give them a breakdown. You know, when they offer a load for 75 cents a mile coming out of Florida, I tell them that, yeah, I use the term that won't even pay for fuel, right? But you know, it's you got to be ever flowing, man. You got to be ever flowing, right? Flatbed trucker, good morning. Sterling, good morning. Gen Z, Chad Bobble is a Marine vet too. Yep. That won't last long if it's related to tariffs. This won't last long if it's related to tariffs, says Cascade. Good to see you. First, did anyone hear, CDN, that Ford, Chevy, Dodge made an announcement yesterday that they are either rebuilding a closed down car factory or will tear down and build a new factory? I did not hear that. Second, Mr. T did not apply the 10% general tariff to Canada. USA has 25% tariff on vehicles, steel, aluminum, and lumber. Products under the USMCA are still in effect. This guy doesn't seem to know details. That's why I wanted to bring that to you. Because again, is that a biased opinion? Is that hope, right? Is that someone trying to create hope or be an optimist? And he admits that he tries to be an optimist. He's the kind of guy that always looks for opportunity when everybody else sees despair. And that's the mark of an entrepreneur. So, you know, like I said, I'm not going to bash the guy. You know, I'm kind of neutral when it comes to rate per mile masters. You know, there's some really good information in there, but when it comes to the tariffs, I'm having trouble discerning what to be hopeful about and what to be concerned about, right? All I know is that what's in front of me is that I saw basically a 10 to 20% drop in rates all across the board out of all areas. And that's you know, that's where I'm at, right? Randy says we need to review. Okay, we'll do that. Good morning. My name is Nobody. Oil is currently trading. Okay, another $5 a barrel. Diesel is down 12 cents today. But I noticed gas has kind of crept up a little bit. Cascade says, CDN, you are in a tough spot. You're more affected than any of us drivers. That's true. That blog focused on auto industry. Are any of you hauling auto parts now or in the past year? I've seen an uptick in auto parts actually in what I've been seeing, and we have hauled some of it. So, you know, and I know that right now, the Southeast is still on fire with building materials. You know, that's the, you know, with all the flooding and the hurricanes and everything else, materials are going through the roof. And yeah, and so that's like, if you're a flatbed, you should be running the Southeast easily. I mean, we got a driver here that's making like $1,000 for 100 something miles, legal freight, right? Not oversized or anything like that. And he literally stays in a 3-state area: Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. That's all he's doing. And he's making buku bucks, right? His rate per mile is through the roof. And his rate per day is pretty decent. So, the author of that blog clearly has not been cold calling shippers in the 1 to 2 months. If he did, shippers are 100% focused on cheap rates, not relationships. Only existing relationships matter. And I agree with that. As far as, you know, the shippers are driving the rates down. I get it. And that's why these brokers are stressed out, just as you were saying earlier in the chat. So, yeah, Gary, there's still a Freightliner in Mexico. Yep. The stock market will balance in the next week, so will oil. That'll be interesting to see that. And so, one of the things I want to recommend to everybody is analysis by paralysis, right? Sometimes you got to ignore the surroundings and just focus on what's in front of you. So earlier in this feed, I talked about how it's important to know your surroundings, to know the whys of what's happening. But at the end of the day, you really don't have control over it. I don't have control over the tariff war. I don't have control over the weather that's causing issues. I don't have control of every single broker bringing everything down by 30% all at once. I can't control any of that. And it's kind of a false god if you think you can control those things. The whole leave it on the dock, rates would come up if drivers would stop taking cheap freight. That is the willingness to try to control that. So you think, if I can tell this guy at the truck stop next to me with the duct tape hood to stop taking that 90-cent a mile freight, that it's eventually going to go away. That's not the case. It's supply and demand. Now, it's frustrating when you get underbid. Sometimes I call one of my brokers and like, hey, I need 25, and they're like, well, our lowest bid is like 2,000. Meanwhile, it's on their online platform for 2,100. And when you get in this mindset of desperation, that's when you have trouble. Think about that. That's when you see loads fly off the shelf at ridiculously low prices, and you're sitting there left like, what just happened? That's kind of that. So it does get frustrating. So you sit there and you look at the guy that just took that load for 20% more than what your cost is lower, right? And so if you're sitting there with a $4,000 a month truck note, that guy with the paid off truck who's not managing their money just took that load from you because he's desperate. He's desperate to roll. And so you think, well, if I can just educate people on this, and this, it'll stop. Well, no, this has been a problem since day one, right? So you just got to manage it. You got to anticipate it, insulate yourself from it as much as you possibly can. As drivers, we look at the big picture, right? The Smith system, look at the big picture. But then if you're ignoring the car in front of you when they slam on the brakes, you're going to hit that car. So you got to be able to pay attention what's directly in front of you. Okay, this is the cards that you've been dealt with today. How are you going to deal with it? And that's what gets you through, right? Good or bad. And so I encourage everybody to know the whys, but also be able to manage what's in front of you as well, because they're both equally important. And so that's why I haven't been focused on the tariffs, because if that's the reason why my freight is, the rates are down, then okay, there it is, right? But there's nothing I can do about it except manage my own operation and help people manage theirs. All right, this is what we got. You got choice A or choice B. This crap sandwich or this crap sandwich. Which one tastes better? We're going to go with that one, because either one of those will sustain better than doing nothing. So, and I see it all the time. People in the spot market, they'll look at a low board and they'll have analysis by paralysis. They can't move. They overanalyze. They want everything picture perfect. Next thing you know, they're sitting for 2 or 3 or 4 days. We had a driver that did that. We had a driver that sat for 5 days in Illinois. And I called him. I said, dude, you okay? And he's like, I can't find a load. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's literally 600 loads within a 50-mile radius of where you're at. And then he started telling me about, oh, I don't do this, 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 I don't do this. And I'm like, oh, okay. Guess what? That person's not in business anymore because he did that for a full year. If you don't run the truck, you go out of business. It's as simple as that. If you don't run your truck, you go out of business. I didn't run my truck. Why? Because I had other money coming in. But at the same time, I didn't have enough capital to fix that truck if I wanted to. I had a couple of people offer to lease my truck from me, lease purchase my truck from me. And I said, no, because you're broke and I don't have the capital to fix this truck. If I had to run this truck full time, I would have traded it in because I knew that truck was going to nickel and dime me, right? But I knew I bought that Kenworth because I knew that was going to be my last truck. And sure enough, it still took $6,000, even though I ran the truck twice that last year for trailer movements. So, and that's not counting the insurance cost that was tacked onto that of just having it. So if you're not running your truck, you're making some mistakes unless you got other money coming in. And is that money enough to sustain a whole truck? Recently I heard a story about a driver that parked his truck and he was doing a lease purchase. And the actual truck owner was like, hey, what gives? How come you haven't been running? And he literally said, I make more money doing DoorDash than running my truck. No, you didn't. That is the mindset. That is a mindset that puts people out, right? You got to look at the bigger picture, but you also got to deal with what's in front of you, right? Chief Freight Hauler confirms what I was saying. This flower season is great. Haven't seen it like this since 2020 shutdowns. Good deal. Excellent. CN says, trying to sell a shipper on service, not easy. New prospects just want to see if you're cheaper. I've never had a new shipper. Your rates are higher. I will use you going forward, right? Only relationships will not get upward pressure on rates, only relationships will not get upward pressure on rates, even when they will too, because rates have been too low to sustain. Summary, study the lanes you run and study what is happening. Adjust accordingly. If rates in your current are in a downturn, then you have to decide to ride out and build relationships or jump where the money is. You got to move even when the rate is below your cost. You have to run where the board will send you by rate, right? Jumping for money, any relationship you built are gone. Understand it's not just about the rate per mile, or you actually build a business that services an area. See, if your service area won't pay the bills, you change service area, right? Marty, with an actual relative question, how many miles on Main Green? There was 715,000. I've learned that bills still need to get paid. If you aren't rolling, then the bills don't get paid, right? Not talked about in the media, but the tariff and risk. USA may require Canadian tourists to provide fingerprints. Snowbirds have left the USA, and many trips to Disneyland canceled tourism down. Chi-Town's the new member. Thank you, Chi-Town. Hope you're doing well. Big Daddy Trucking. Cold world. Some of these guys need to be out. Yep. Sterling, I'm relying heavily on mindset. Luckily, I'm happy keeping that left door shut, right? Yeah. Sterling only spent like $20 at the Joplin Petro, right? He bought a broom, a little tiny broom in dustpan. Marty, how low do you think rates could go? Well, it depends. I mean, I've seen rates as low as 75 cents a mile for 44,000 pounds coming out of Florida. So you can't get much lower than that. That's the bottom, I think. But as far as the rest of the country, it fluctuates, right? USA requiring fingerprints is kind of like Canada requiring the shot a few years back. Rates to Canada skyrocketed, hurting the Canadian people. Interesting. So now I promise you we'd look at rates, and we're going to look at some rates. So let's go to Missouri here, see what the inbound and outbound is. Let's say we want to go into Missouri. What's the highest paying thing? Let's see here. Highest rate, long haul stuff coming into Missouri. $1.44 to go from Oregon to Kansas City. $2.33 to go from Laredo, St. Joseph. That's not bad. $22.50 for 2 days. That's a pretty good rate. Let's take a look at this one. Picks up today too. So if you're in Laredo and you want to come visit me, actually no, this won't take you past my house. But is there an extra stop or something? Maybe not. Now, is this higher than normal rate a tariff thing? I don't know. But Green Screens has got it anywhere from 21 to 24, and they're right in the middle of that. So could be just the load to truck ratio at that exact moment. Another one, Houston to Centralia, another good one, 2150. $1,000 a day to come out of Texas. Which this kind of explains why it's not paying to go into Texas, right? Whoops. $1.49 to come out of New Jersey to go to Mount Vernon, Missouri. Not too far from the normal rate, which that's normal for New Jersey. Georgia to Kirksville, $1.68. $1.45 to come out of Baltimore. Let's take a look at this one. Picks up Monday at 12:30. Delivers Wednesday at 10 a.m. Not too much further from what the normal rate's been going, right? So let's take a look at Florida here. Let's go to Florida. All right, inbound rates. What's the highest rate per mile going into Florida across the country today on the 123 low board? Actually, rate per mile. $5.06 a mile. Woo, from Alabama. No, that's $400. Let's see. Now, if you could do 3 of those a day, it's only 79 miles. Do 3 of them a day, round trip it. That's a pretty good day, right? But most shippers receivers aren't set up like that. Or eventually things get clogged like in traffic. Here we go. McDonough to Ocala, Florida. We have a driver that runs this lane all the time. $3.80 a mile, $1,300. And then he'll bounce right back up and do it again. You know, that's $1,300 for 342 miles. You're still at $2 a mile almost $2 a mile if you round trip this, right? Newport, Tennessee to Boynton Beach, 308. 304, going to Royal Palm Beach from Jackson, Georgia. Now, let's look at the outbound of Florida. That will tell you a different story. Highest rate per mile is, well, $3.26 a mile to go from Monticello to Franklin, Tennessee. Call me a liar here. We got 3 extra stops. So depending on when those stops are, now if you get those done in 2 days, but look, vented van. That's where the money is coming out of Florida right now. Vented van. So that's plants. This is plants. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier in this feed, right? Jacksonville to Alabama. Oh, load no longer available. Let's see. J. Florida to Port Wentworth, Georgia, 1058. Let's see what this is. Cotton. I didn't know cotton came out of Florida, so you learn something new every day. They got a bunch of those, so this is obviously a project that Monster Logistics is working on, right? So you get a load to J. Florida for $1,300 or $1,400 out of Atlanta, and then you do this load right back up to Port Wentworth. You're making pretty good coin, right? And this is for later in the month, so who knows, I don't even mess with these that are like 2 weeks from now. See, and this is what I'm talking about. Mariner Logistics has Walnut Hill, Florida to Port Wentworth, right? Obviously, it's a project because they got them for the next several days at the same rate each day, right? So if you run this area, you might call Mariner and say, hey, man, tell me what's going on. And then you work your magic with them and then see if you can get something steady. And then when that wave is over, then it'll be done. I mean, you're getting $2 a mile coming out of Florida. Let's take a look at one of these. Let's see where the map is on this. Yeah, that's in the Panhandle. So you can get a good rate going to Alabama and then grab this load and go back. Obviously, they've made a deal with the cotton shipper, right? $1.83 to come, Jacksonville, Alabama. That will always pay a little bit better than say Jacksonville to Columbus, Ohio, or something like that. But so Florida rates are up a little bit coming out, but none of these are going to the Midwest. So let's take a look at Georgia. Highest outbound is $4,100. Go to Washington, $1.62 a mile. A lot of the long haul stuff. Unsustainable rates, in my opinion, for long miles. $1.13 to go to California. Now, does this mean that California freight outbound has picked up? Well, then you two-step it to California if you want to go out there and take advantage of that. $1.05. See, Marty, your question of how low can you see rates going? $1.05 to go all the way from Georgia to Sacramento, right? Let's take a look at this one, and then let's look at the outbound rates. See, the big red that tells me this is a stinker on my profit margin. But then let's take a look at Sacramento back to Georgia. What's the going rate on this? $1.81 a mile. Now, if your costs are $2 a mile, you're losing on both ends, right? The majority of you, your costs are $2 a mile. And if you think it's not, like if you're saying, oh, my costs are only $1 a mile, you're lying to yourself. I challenge you to show me that that's true. Because if it is true, I want to know how. Inbound to Georgia, what's the highest paying load? Let's see. This one, $1.81 a mile, $4,500. American Canyon, California. That's the one we just looked at. $1.50 to go to Georgia from Salt Lake City, Georgia, or Utah. Here we go. Laredo to Tifton. So Laredo's got some good rates coming out this week. But getting into Laredo might be the challenge on your rate. Right? That's how it works. That's how this all works. $3 a mile, $2,400 to go from West Chicago to Noonan, Georgia. That's pretty good. $1.45 to come out of Colorado. Of course, that's Colorado. So let's switch this to rate per mile, and this is when you're going to see the Georgia to Florida stuff. Rate per mile. Boom. Let's see. South Carolina. Scroll down. Alabama. A lot of $600, $700 days here. There's the 700s. I do is scroll down until I see a 4-digit number. And again, this Mariner stuff is all over the place, so they've kind of clogged up the board here. Here we go. 1,300. Hebron, Kentucky to Atlanta, Georgia. This is picking up on Monday. Probably deliver Tuesday, so not a bad rate per day, right? Wisconsin to Lithia Springs, 270 a mile, $2,600, 2-day run. Pick up Monday, deliver Wednesday. Take a look at this one. Oh, it's hazmat. All right, let's go back to the comments here. Sterling, thank you for your membership. I see so many truck lawyer ads. Why fix trucking, right? Sterling, that's why trucking won't get fixed, right? It's a money roll. That's a tariff. Think Mexico, Port City. Yep, that's why rates are coming out of Laredo. Good. McDonough to Ocala pays $1,900 if you have hazmat. Yes, that is. We've seen that. Our leaders in the Senate said during Sean Duffy confirmation hearing that they want safety and low costs. They passed legislation to accomplish that goal. Someone says, woohoo, I got a vented van. I've seen $2 out of Florida for vented vans. Yep. You probably won't have a food grade trailer once unloaded, right? Yeah, that's the bad part. I highly encourage everybody to have a leaf blower for your truck. I don't care what platform. You could be even a flatbed. You haul mulch in a flatbed, you're sweeping it, right? Easier just to get the leaf blower. Work smarter, not harder, right? Wonder how many trucking lawyers sponsor fly-by-night trucking schools. Seems like a perfect ROI, right? Jeffrey Kuhn, I started reefering the 1st of February, gave the truck back last Thursday, watched the spot market drop 15 to 20% in that short amount of time. I was literally making less when I was working local RGN on the W-2. I'd be curious, Jeffrey, if you had looked at the trends in reefer throughout like maybe a couple of years to see if that 15 to 20% drop was a normal thing, a seasonal thing, or if that was a conditional thing. So, Cascade says, Jeffrey Kuhn, the spot has been that way for 2 years. What very little contract freight they had wasn't much better. Yeah, contracts are kind of in the dumps right now on a lot of stuff. SST, what's up? It is Friday. Vented vans loads in South Texas also. That's good to know. Everyone's cost is very close to $2 per mile, including everything. Steve is correct. If you say otherwise, you're not doing the math or you're lying to yourself. CDN says, lately my experience is knowledge isn't paying. Rookies in the industry don't ask the questions. I do, and freight gets moved somehow. Frustrating is that I was down $40K in my pay in 2024. I am honest, no money. That's the thing, right? So something to keep in mind is that like Cascade pointed out, let's say you're a rookie owner operator and you don't know your true cost. You're going to take whatever's handed to you if you don't have the knowledge. And if you got a shipper that wants cheap trucks, that's the truck that's going to get the freight. They want you to not know any better. And that's why, you have a problem with predatory leases, because you're literally taking someone that's not educated in the numbers, keeping them in the dark with the real numbers, not realizing that they're slowly losing, but yet your freight's getting moved, right? So that's kind of the nature of the trucking industry. And it's been like that for years and years and years under every political affiliation, right? I agree with that. Leaf blower works good for truck interiors too. Gary's got one. If I get 10 miles per gallon, I don't pay myself. My cost should be, and you don't pay yourself, should be below $2 a mile. What would you estimate my cost per mile generally? You haven't run long enough to know that number yet. Once we get a couple of weeks in you, then we could probably kind of take a look at that. And that's an easy look. It's easy to calculate that because you have a cost per mile and a cost per day, cost per week, cost per month. You can divide it by any number that you want. At the end of the month, you look at all your numbers and you divide it by the day, by the mile that you ran, miles that you ran, and that's what you do, right? All right. Someone wants me to look up an average rate here. So let's go to market rates here. Bay City, Michigan to Mount Vernon, Indiana. Vernon, Indiana. Forgive me here, doing some work. All right. Cascade says Snorelord, CDN is talking about brokers, although you are correct that it applies to drivers. Anyone ever purposely taken a load below your cost? Yeah, it happens all the time. Just to get out of an area. Every time you deadhead to get out of an area, you're taking a load that's below your cost. So yeah, I mean, brokers do it all the time. Drivers do it all the time. That's how you like. And I've said this before. Like when UPS was getting ready to strike, Amazon said, "Look, we'll get these routes and we'll take a loss at it just to get in there." Right. And so I've taken loads at a loss to get into a situation. Right. T-Bone, good morning. This is A says Sterling needs pigtails B hat. That's true. Right now, I'm just running careful with both eyes open. There you go. Cascade says cheap free all, you have to pay yourself if you don't live in the truck with no family, but you still have showers, food, laundry. That alone would be $1,000 per month, give or take. You need a third eye in this economy, right? I added another driver to my insurance this week. Maybe it's time to start a slow growth process. I occasionally take a pay and load, T-Bone. Wait, you guys are getting paid. Whoops. Cascade almost 6 years out here. I haven't missed a paycheck yet. There you go. What's the most you've had the deadhead for a load? Me? Ooh. Trying to think. In my own truck, probably about 300 miles. As a company driver, we were doing this project from Springfield to Port St. Lucie, Florida. It was going to Tropicana. It was plastic pallets. And we were literally going to Port St. Lucie and then deadheading 600 miles up to Conyers to pick up a load of paper going back up to Missouri and then rinse and repeat. I did that like 3 turns of that. That was awesome. I like doing that run. With the contract that I have with a few of the trucks, we've had the deadhead 1,000 miles to get them to where they need to go, and they're still profitable. Hold on a second. Let me.
I was thinking about something.
Okay. Well, tell.
Trailer Lorna had, there's really nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
Right, because she said it was leaking in the back, but that was after that huge storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that 50-mile-an-hour winds and that it just has that damage that most tricks have in that corner.
Mm-hmm.
That blade's spent, but that trailer's owned by us, so.
All right, guys, I got to get to work, so we got to go. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you next week. And hey, bang your head. Strength for today, over tomorrow. Let's go.